Today, I'm going to share 3 things all actors should be doing to level up their game during the strike so that you can come out of the gate on fire when filming and auditioning starts up again. Hey guys, my name is Hans Christopher. I'm an actor, coach, and creator of the Working Actors series. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. If you haven't yet, make sure you download the free memorization guide down below. With that, let's dive in. All right, thank you guys so much for coming to another lesson. Today's lesson, we're going to be doing it on 3 things actors can do during the strike. Now, I talked a little bit about it last week, but in the way, this is why I like to develop mindset so much, is by developing a strong mindset, you start to look at things like this as opportunities, right? The industry is going to shut down. There's going to be no auditions. It's going to be a time for you to start working on things and doing things that you may not have been able to do if you're busy auditioning or if you're busy going out for things or if you're just trying to get in with reps and doing things of that nature. This may be the time where you can really target your energy and your learning to a specific area so you can make up. So looking for opportunities, how to make this into an opportunity for growth. So that said, my goal and the way I've always looked at times like this, which, I've talked about it before, November, December, January, usually the industry kind of gets real slow. I'll use that as an opportunity for growth. COVID was a big time I used for growth. And this is no different. Whether this is a few months, 6 months, I'm going to continue to kind of dig and search for those areas that I can improve myself as an artist, as a person, so that when the doors open up again, we all hit the ground running. There's no catching up. We are ready to go, ready to get that rep, ready to do what we need to do to kind of make sure we're putting our best foot forward. So that said, here's 3 things. These are just 3 things that I like to go through. 3 things that I come up with that I think can be incredibly valuable if used properly. So 3 things actors can do during the strike. Number 1, and this is going to sound a little bit, you're going to say, of course, but it's level up your materials. Your materials, if anybody doesn't know, your materials are everything from, let's just go through from the kind of the bottom to the top, your resume. Your Actors Access profile, your IMDb page, I put in as a part of your materials because that's a part of what you're selling. Casting looks it up quickly and they see your pictures, your credits, and if you have any footage or anything up there quickly, like a little snapshot of it. I would even consider if you Google your name in and stuff comes up or it doesn't come up, a part of your materials. Obviously, your audition tapes, your headshots, your reel footage or any footage that you might have that you'd be able to attach to your Actors Access profile. What we talked about last week, your castability sheet, I believe is an important part of those materials because by creating that, you've started to work on those things that we talked about before, those superpowers. And another thing that I've started to do, I don't know if you guys have heard of EPK, is to create an EPK, not in the sense that it's used for press releases with publicists, but an EPK that is a quick snapshot, a way to showcase who you are, and what you've booked into a professional kind of package. So, and then I even consider emails, pitch emails that you're going to be sending to reps, managers, agents as a part of my material package. So those are all things that I view as essential components of your material, this package that represents what you are, your product. And what we talked about last week, finding those superpowers, creating your foundation, figuring out what it is you want, who it is you are, and then the next step of that too, which we haven't really talked about, was likening yourself, finding those actors who represent what you are in the market right now, and what films are they shooting. But that all goes into that package of your materials. And our job in this downtime is to make sure that you are showcasing yourself at your best, with what you can do and the funding that you have. If you have the money to go out and take amazing headshots, by all means do it. Now, I'm not saying go out and take headshots if you haven't figured out what your breakdowns are, if you haven't figured out how best to represent yourself. I think then you'll just be wasting money. Maybe you'll get a shot that is good, but you don't want to place what you are on the shots you've already taken. You want to go into the shots having an understanding of where you're coming from, and what are some of those elements that you know you want to get. Then you create that sheet with some mottos. Remember we talked about that. And then the goal is to make sure that your materials, every one of those steps, represents some of those things we've uncovered in those breakdowns of who you are. And if you can start doing that, everything else becomes so easy. You're getting a rep becomes so easy. So this is the time, especially over the course of the next month or two. If you can't afford headshots, go out with your friends and take the best shots you can with somebody who has a DSLR. Look up some YouTubes of how to do it. Do the best you can for now. Get those as your first couple shots up on Actors Access. Make sure you have some self-tapes that represent those elements that we talked about with your superpowers and who you are. Make sure that your IMDb, you don't even have to have credits, but at least make sure you have some pictures up there that represent that image that you want to be projecting, that feeling or essence, so that if somebody this is always a great way that I like to look at it with your materials, is if somebody were to type in your name or go on your IMDb, would they get in a snapshot the worlds that you fit in so well, the worlds that you want to be in? If they're not getting that at your IMDb with the pictures that are showing up there or the pictures that are showing up when you type in your name on Google, then you have some work to do. You can refine your materials and get yourself to a place where, just by changing out photos on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and some of these things that are captured and pushed to the top of images in Google, you can start to create that image a little bit. And that's just one small component of the materials, but that's what you could be working on now. So that's one part of it. It kind of goes along with the superpowers that we talked about. And if you know what those superpowers are, if you know what you're representing, and even better, you found other actors who are doing that, now you kind of have a roadmap to follow and to go and to try and create an image of what you are truthfully, and have that represented. Because the next step is getting representation. And when you have that material package, when you have that aligned with who you are, selling yourself to an agent, to a manager, becomes 100 times easier. So that's number one. That is the first thing I would do, is I would level up your materials. Make sure you're spending time every day on something in your materials. The best way I like to go through this, and this is going to actually be the next thing, but you could also use this approach for all of your materials, is all of the materials that I listed there, write them down all the way from the first thing, from your resume, Actors Access, all the way to the end of EPK or footage. And then what you're going to do is just rate it. Rate where you are. If it's a 0, if you don't even have a reel, then put a 0. You're not there yet. You're not at a place where you have footage to be able to make a reel yet. Your job then is to make sure you have 2 audition tapes that are killer, that align with exactly what you want. So with each one of those things, mark off, give yourself a little ranking, and then it'll tell you where you can go, how best to level up in that area for your material. So the next thing that I like to do on a downturn in a time like this is I like to turn my weaknesses into strength. So the last one has to do more with the business. This one I'm talking more about the skill set. Skill set as an artist, as an actor, what I bring to the table, right? And this can be anything from accents to voice work to what were some of the other things that I've done? Self-tape, making sure my self-tape was better. This is the time to hone in and improve one of those areas. Now, the way that I like to do this is exactly like I talked about with the materials, is taking a step back from myself. And you've got to get good at evaluating where you're at. That kind of goes along with the process that I gave you for the evaluating your own audition tape. It's also a process that you've got to be checking in with yourself. Whenever you're in a class, whenever you're trying to do something, you've got to be checking in with yourself and evaluating and seeing where you're not improving, where you are improving. Because in doing that, just like we talked about with the chess thing, you're going to be able to figure out where you can improve the most. So what I like to do in a time like this, I've actually done it already. I'll give you the example that I've used. But what I like to do is take a step back and evaluate myself as a whole, as an actor, right? Where are some of my strengths? Where I've been strong and where do I feel comfortable right now? And where are some of the places that I'm feeling limited when I'm watching my tapes back, that I'm not doing? What are some of the last couple times I've been on set? What have my lesson learned folder saying? How can I improve some of those areas? That'll point me a lot of times to those places that I need to improve. And then from there, I want to pick one. I don't want to create a list of 5 things. For the next few months, I am only going to focus on one thing, right? So for example, for the last 2 years, one of the most important things that I found, ways I could level up my game, was improving my voice. A lot of times, especially when pressure was put on, I would get to a place where my voice would get a little high. It's not the best. I have a deviated septum, so I have a little bit of a nasally thing going on. But in audition settings, and especially high stakes, I would tend to lose connection to my root, lose connection to the richness or fullness of my voice, which tended to betray a lot of the characters I went in for. You know, a lot of the characters I went in for, you either had to be afraid of, or you had to be comforted by them. You had to feel safe by them. And that's not going to happen. Like I said, we're very good at seeing truth when we're watching someone else. And you know, if your voice is not there, then not connected, then it's very easy to see that it's not being truthful in the moment. So one of the things that I did was I worked on my voice. I came up with a little motto for it too. For 6 months, I worked only on, I called it finding my voice, speaking my truth, and then roaring. So this process of really honing in on the different things that I could do to fix my voice. I got books. I went to a coach. I learned everything I could. I'm probably going to do another lesson just on voice work for people who want to do it. But a great tool for anyone who wants to dive into voice is a website called Voice Science Works. I will, if anybody else, if you forget about it, just ask me. I'll forward it to you. But Voice Science Works is such an amazing tool for understanding how the voice works, what's going on, what gives you more resonance. It's focused a little more with singing, but you can use a lot of those lessons for speaking too. So I love that. Was a great site. I also ended up reaching out to Mark Rylance, and he got back to me on some of his favorite coaches. I got 2 of my favorite books from him that had to do with voice. But from that experience, from diving in on something that I thought was a weakness, I came up with a process and a routine that I use when I go into auditions and performances to feel more comfortable and feel better about using my voice. And I found some amazing literature. I reached out to people I wouldn't have expected to reach out to. And I have a routine and a process to use that makes me feel much more confident with my voice. Now, that was just one example. That was one example of me diving into an area that I believed I was weakest in. And I could only do that by taking a step back and kind of evaluating where I'm at. Great example. This would be a great time if you're a new actor to do the 100 tapes challenge. Force yourself to put yourself on tape 100 times. What I'm doing right now, this live video feed to you guys, is actually this in play. I knew the strike, I knew the downturn was coming. It had already been coming with how much auditioning had slowed down. And I said to myself, all right, as an artist, as an actor, what is some of the areas that I am weakest in? One of my areas that I'm very weak in is playing myself. Some actors are very good at just playing themselves and feeling comfortable in that world. For me, I have always gravitated toward those roles that I got to kind of lose myself in. It didn't mean that I wasn't bringing true things to the performances, but those roles that were so far outside of myself, I had to find something to connect myself and to the role with. And I think that is because by being in something that was so far out away from who I was, but still connected to a core, I was able to give myself permission to just go. to just do anything, and it didn't matter because I didn't really know what feeling comfortable or not comfortable felt like. Whereas when I played roles that are supposed to be more close to the vest, more close to who I am, I became very self-conscious of why I'm speaking a certain way, what I'm doing, why am I doing certain things this way. I feel fake when I laugh. Just that constant kind of thought process would go through for any role that I felt just being myself. So one of the things that I wrote down in fixing this weakness, it was just one of the examples, was getting better at just live talking to camera, to people behind the camera. Because I think I found that was something that was in that same vein, that feeling of not being comfortable as myself speaking to people. So this entire concept of the course, now this also served as helping for the course that I created and the working actor, but I looked at it and I was like, I think this could be a great tool to get me more comfortable just being free to be me on camera. So this is the reason I did this. So that was one example of kind of how to put it in motion. And what you'll find is if you're doing the 100 tapes challenge, if you're doing something like that, give yourself somebody else you have to do it for, you have to put yourself up for, you have to get it in on time, or else, for me, now maybe you're better at it than I am, but for me, I tend to let myself down when it comes to it. But if I have somebody else who's waiting for it, if I have somebody else who's expecting me to put it up, then I have to do it. There's no kind of getting away from it. There's no procrastinating. So it's an absolutely amazing tool if you start to think this way of turning your weaknesses into strength. I believe this actually came from the Stoicism book as well. But my dad was a big proponent of this kind of thinking as well. But if you can start to get to a mode of evaluating yourself where you are honestly, and then saying, where are my weaknesses? And then picking one and giving yourself a timeline, 3 months, 6 months, that I'm going to focus on this particular skill set, whether it's voice, whether it's an accent, whether it's self-taping, whether it's being better as yourself in front of the camera, whatever it is, or whatever you find you could be better at. Maybe it's theater, maybe it's live performances, maybe it's freeing yourself up. One of the things that I've seen have an amazing effect is if you start to look like your self-tapes, you're very locked up and you're feeling very stiff and uptight and locked up. An improv class like UCB can be unbelievable because it frees you up to live in this kind of imaginative world. And that goes over to the self-tape process very well because you have to create stuff all over the room to give that 360 live feeling. So that's an incredible tool to use to get yourself better for skill set. And then so that's number 2. And then the third thing that I believe is incredibly important, and this tends to be more important for those actors who have been in it for a while, actors who are starting to get burned out. The process of doing this and the rejection that we face, especially when you start to hit those low-hanging fruits of getting your first headshots, getting some footage, getting your audition tapes. Those are things that you have 100% control of. When it comes to getting reps, when it comes to booking jobs, that's not entirely up to you. You have to get better at talent. It can be years for you to work your way up to a level where people look at you and want to book you. And the process can be incredibly frustrating. And the way that I like to say it is, it's like you have this fire in your belly. So it's not a rule, but number 3 thing that we can be doing as artists is feeding the artist. And what I mean by that is art ignites the artist. So if you find yourself starting to get to a place where things are feeling like a grind, your child artist isn't having fun, it doesn't feel playful, everything feels like a task, nothing feels like creative or fun, it tends to mean that your artist isn't being fed. And what works amazing for me, and this art feeds the artist, so it can be different for anyone. It can be poetry, it can be plays, it can be books, it can be a performance that you saw. for me, some of the things that I can go back to that immediately inspire me. So Deadwood, the show, is the reason I became an artist. That was the thing that actually got me through the doors of the first acting studio I went to, which I was, if you didn't hear my story, I was absolutely petrified of public speaking and being in front of people. But that show and the performances on that show ignited something in me that said, I want to do that. I want to tell stories like that. I want to live in a world like that and experience that. So it's different for everyone. Over the past, 5, 6, 7 years, I now thankfully have a system I can go back on and say, there's books, James Baldwin, a book, The Peregrine, tons of different books have ignited that in me. Performances that I've seen. I think anytime I want to jump back into feeling creative and feeling alive and starting to get into some shit that, it's always what happens. When I find a performance that really activates me, like Daniel Day-Lewis and There Will Be Blood does it every time for me. But it can be small performances too with an actor I didn't know, but seeing something that grips me or makes me feel a lot. I'll take whatever audition that was, and I'll work backwards from it. I'll literally take it, transcribe it, put it up, play with it, see if I can get into that mode. I've done that with There Will Be Blood. I've done that with some of these performances that really speak to me, because I believe that if something has spoken to you that much, it's kind of strummed one of those chords that we talked about, one of your notes, one of those things that are so true to you, and different ways we can go about finding those notes and getting to those notes. One is doing the work on yourself, like we talked about the superpowers. But I believe another way you can do that is going in the reverse, finding those performances that spoke to you and then almost dissecting them and figuring exactly out what it was in the performance that made you feel something. And I'm not talking about facial tics or things that they're doing. That comes from the what they're emoting. I'm talking about trying to get down to the why. Why are they doing that? Why is this happening? And that ignites my artist. That absolutely gets me on fire. So I'll go back to this process of mindset, skill set, and the business. What tends to happen with students who have been in my class for a long time, if you start to focus too much on the business, on the materials, on headshots and doing these things, it becomes very tasky. Things become very, it feels like a lot of work. And so an important part of that is feeding your artist, finding those things that bring life to you, because once that starts happening, man, I could spend 10 hours on a role if I'm ignited. I could spend, it's not even work. It doesn't even feel like work. It just feels like you're playing and living in this land. So your goal, if you don't have things that you can call out, that you can read, that you can go to, that you can see, is to come up with a list over this period. Find some of those things that speak to that child artist in you, that ignite your soul, that ignite your artist, so that you can use them when you evaluate yourself and you start to feel like things are becoming a grind. This is the time to find that thing that ignites you, because we as artists in this industry are going to have so many times where it feels like a grind, where it feels like you want to just say fuck it and give up and go home. But if you can have, I kind of call it like a bug out bag for actors. I think I'm going to do another lesson on this one, but a kind of a process you can go through, art that will inspire you, to rely on and fall back on. It can save you. It can bring you back from the dead and get you kind of motivated again. So for me, that is an incredibly powerful tool, especially for actors who have been in this for a while and are feeling burned out, are feeling like that flame is flickering and not alive. So that's 3 things that I would do, or I am doing right now, or plan on doing over the course of the next few months. This is a skill set. I was going to evaluate and see another kind of skill. One other thing that I did for skill set, the second one time was, I'd always felt very behind with Shakespeare. I'd never gotten into Shakespeare. This is what I did at the beginning of COVID. So I decided to get into Shakespeare and start reading Shakespeare out loud every day on my own, but out loud, and trying to kind of immerse myself in the world and the characters and I think I read 20 plays, and it was just a process that I did every morning over COVID to I worked on my accents. It helped me just get to a place where I could jump into different characters, and it allowed me to dive into Shakespeare to a place where Shakespeare became that thing that fed my artist. So it actually hit on all three of those things for me over COVID. So this is just the process. These are three things that I would do, or I would look into or start examining, that I think could really, really help you as an artist, as an actor, and just if you have free time and you're kind of going in all different directions, to really hone in on yourself and be like, all right, what are some of the material things I can do? What's a skill set I can do? And what's something I can feed my artist with to keep that motivation, that flame ignited, and then focus on those things. It doesn't mean if something else comes along that your manager talks about or you want to do, don't do it. But say, okay, over the course of the next 3 months, I'm going to focus on these things primarily every day for a little bit of time, even if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, every day, Monday through Friday. I'm going to put some time into these things, and you will level up and grow substantially over the course of the next few months. So I hope that helped. If you guys have any questions about that, feel free to ask. And if not, you have a question about something else, we can get to it after that. Hey artists, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and I will leave you with this question. What skill are you planning on working on during the strike? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you next time.